pretty cool. It's like I just magically appear all of a sudden. Well, I need one of those in my church. Just magically appear all of a sudden. How's everybody doing? Easter Sunday? Y'all excited? I try not to say Happy Easter a whole lot, more than I do say Happy Resurrection Sunday, because you'll find out why the resurrection matters more than anything else in this world. Can we pray before we start, Father? You're awesome. Lord, as Scott just sung, those who have ears, and all of us have them attached to our head, let us hear what the Spirit wants to say to the church. In Jesus' name, amen. So the Shroud of Turin, I'm going to get right on into it. Shroud of Turin is one of the most scrutinized pieces of ancient archaeology of all time. It says, joking with brother over here, he's got a good-looking beard, by the way, wherever he is. I'm sitting there, he is back there. He said, man, you could find an entire dinosaur with skin on it and everything, and they still wouldn't scrutinize that as much as they've scrutinized this particular artifact. There's been skeptic after skeptic who have tried to either copy it, and if they could, I'd give it to you. You could take it home, like use it as a shower curtain or something, I don't know. But if they could copy it, it would go away. If they could figure out how it was made, it would go away. But after 40 years of intense study, they still can't make that do that. I'm going to present to you this morning only 4 scientific anomalies, and all 4 of these scientific anomalies are peer-reviewed science, meaning that the scientific community has had a chance to take the research that's been done, and then they'll write a rebuttal against it and say, well, what about this, what about that? Then the scientists will take it back, they'll answer the rebuttals, and it'll go back and forth until the scientific community at large is approving of what I'm about to share. And I didn't always have it that way. There's a guy named Barry Schwartz who we talk a lot about. Barry is the leading expert in the world on the Shroud of Turin. He's got Shroud.com. Has the most information you could ever imagine on the Shroud. He was part of the 1978 Shroud of Turin research project, which was the only team that's ever had hands-on, 5 days, 5 nights, access to it, to study it. And he convicted me about some of the things I used to have in my presentation. He said they're not peer-reviewed. If they're not peer-reviewed, leave them out, because the peer-reviewed science alone is enough to convict the Shroud of being guilty. So that's what I'm going to share with you today. The Shroud of Turin it's about 14.5 feet long. What you're seeing here today is one of only 5 in the world. There are other shrouds out there that people have made, but this one actually came from the 1978 Shroud of Turin research project. They made 5 of them when they got back stateside so they could continue to study it. And I was fortunate enough about 10 years ago or something to be able to pick this up and verify. Barry was actually the one who created it and verified exactly what it is, and so it's a very unique opportunity to see what exactly the shroud would look like if you were standing in Turin. People will wait and hours upon hours in lines, and then they do like this, and they get about maybe 45 seconds to shuffle foot across, and they see it. I'm like, you're crazy. You just what you lost your mind or something? You're going to wait days and do that? And I want to say this piece does not make or break my faith. My faith does not rest on this. It's not an icon. It's not to be worshipped. It's not, and I say that because there are people who have exalted this to some sort of iconoclastic status where they worship it and bow down at it. Don't bow down at a piece of paper or a piece of cloth. That's not what we're here to do. So I'm going to present to you, I just need to clear that up because some people take that the wrong way. But I'm going to present to you the scientific information. I got to show you kind of how this works. Jesus was put in the shroud like this, laid down, and then the shroud was folded back over top of him. And so I call it the Jesus burrito, is what I call it. You can laugh at that. My goodness. Jeez Louise. Are we supposed to laugh? I'm not sure if we're supposed to laugh at that. Listen, if you can't laugh, you haven't found Christ. I'm just telling you. God's got a sense of humor. Have you seen the platypus? Well, come on, man. Seriously. If God doesn't have a sense of humor, I am doomed. I really am. I laugh at just about everything. Like if you trip and fall, I'm sorry. I'm going to like I just can't help it. I laugh at everything. I just find humor. Once you know where I was and now where I am, you'll see why I pretty much laugh at everything. Everything else is downhill. I'm going to show you a short video though that's going to help explain some of this, because right now you're looking at it going, it looks like one of those ink spot tests. Like what am I looking at? I see a dinosaur. We're going to look at the video. Ready?
1532, Chambéry Cathedral, France. For its safekeeping, the Savoy family puts the shroud in a casket and hides it in a crypt behind a grille with 4 locks, each with a separate key. But on December 15th, a fire blazes through the cathedral. Clergymen frantically search for the 4 keys, but to no avail. Finally, a blacksmith is summoned manages to free the shroud, but not before the metal casket has started to melt and drip on the folded cloth inside, scarring it forever with burn holes and scorch lines down both sides of the image.
So what you're seeing, because of that fire, it dripped down on the shroud, and it caused burn marks here. And what the nuns did was a few things. They would cut out the worst part of it and then sew this patch in. So every one of these spots that looks a little bit different, those are sewn in patches. And I'll show you why it kind of has some symmetry to it as far as why these patches are here and those patches are down there. You've got scorch marks going all the way down through it. You've got water stains on there. There's a big one there. There's a water stain here. There's a smaller one here and a smaller one here. You've got water stains. There's another water stain right there. You've got all these different things on there. You've got the burn marks. You've got blood that's on there. Yes, I said blood. We're going to close with that. And then what most people don't see, though, is if you look real close, you'll see the image of a man's face right here. There's 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth. It comes down, his arms are crossed over one another, and it goes down to where his ankles are down here. And then this is the back side of the image where you've got the back side of his head coming down the small of his back and going down to his ankles down this side. And so what we're going to unpack today is what in the world are we looking at? Right? Amen? There you say amen? Amen. All right, woo! That was going to say one more time. Amen. That's cool. It's like echoing in here. I like that. Y'all are good. So here's the thing. When I first started studying the Shroud, the first thing that came up was it's a medieval forgery. So what I want to do is I want to set the temperature of technology back in the medieval times. So when I give you those 4 scientific anomalies, we compare those 4 scientific anomalies. I could give you about 100 of them. I'm only going to give you 4 for the sake of, we got to eat, don't we? It's Easter. The next thing you do on Easter is you go eat lots of food and then you repent for gluttony. You say amen. Yeah, amen. I was over there drumming and working on my appetite. So I'm only going to give you 4, but I want to make sure that you understand the technology of the medieval times. So when we compare it to it, we can tell whether or not it can hold up. So in 1220, high technology, we've got the treadwheel crane. This is like a human hamster wheel that you would get in, and you would pedal yourself like this, and it would lift things up. And that's high technology, y'all. This is good stuff, right? Amen. All right, yeah. Woo! I like him. I got a sticker book. I should go get it. He gets a sticker. Started carrying stickers with me, so when people do cool stuff, all of a sudden, Joe, you wouldn't imagine how much they respond. Like, I need a sticker too. 1280, the spectacles come out. Before 1280, you couldn't see anything. This one is my favorite, though. In 1498, the bristle toothbrush was invented. I figured before 1498, you just use your finger, and after you figure out what the first toothbrush was, you're going to say, I'll keep using my finger. Because see, they took a bone, and they took the hair off the back of a hog and tied it to the bone, trimmed it up, and that was your first toothbrush. How many of y'all are glad you got your toothbrush nowadays? Amen? Here's high technology, though. So keep this in mind when I share these 4 scientific anomalies with you, that this is the temperature of technology at that time. There weren't, I'm not saying they were cavemen, but they weren't all that advanced, okay? You're brushing your teeth with hog hair, you're not very advanced in my book. So here's the thing. 1988, there was some carbon dating testing that was done, and I'm going to kind of go through this pretty quickly because if I was standing up here and I was at a university and a gentleman over here was opposing my view on the Shroud and I was pushing the authenticity of the Shroud, he would not bring up the 1988 carbon dating, which 10 years ago was quite a topic, maybe 20 years ago was quite a topic, but he wouldn't bring it up because he knows at the academic level it doesn't hold water and he would actually look foolish. But I just want to, because I respect your intelligence and you've probably read an article I want to share with you, Ray Rogers is one of the scientists that was part of the STIRT team. He wrote this article called The Thermochemical Active, and here's an excerpt from it. In 1988, 1260 and 1390 with 95% confidence prompted questions about the validity of the Shroud, right? So here's the thing. He said this. Observations prove that the radiocarbon sample was not a part of the original cloth of the Shroud. In turn, the radiocarbon date was thus not valid for determining the true age of the Shroud. Watch this. This is cool.
God holes in your clothes, unique without a trace. We are reweavers. We have a specialized skill. We repair holes and tears in damaged garments. Reweaving is so detailed, this video had to be shown in fast forward. At this speed, you can see the expert weaving of thread strands into your garment's damaged area, creating virtually almost invisible repairs.
I'm actually going to speed it up from here. You keep watching as I finish talking about this. So what they did was that not only did they sew in the patches But they took, in some of the holes, they did a French invisible weave, where the artisan would go back behind the hole and on top of the hole and go back and forth to the point to the naked eye, you couldn't tell if there was a patch there. When they took the threads and tested them in the laboratories, they were coming up with mixed results because they had mixed threads. So the entire thing was thrown out. Amen? So I'm going to move on for sake of time. Got my amen person over there. I'm going to stand up here with a palm thread and start waving at me like I know what you're doing, like you get to waving the preacher as he do it. Where's my towel guy? I need a towel guy. I'm official. The history of the shroud, where was it before? It was in the Shroud of Turin. It was in the Turin Cathedral. That's where it got its name from. I'm going to make a case, strong case, as a matter of fact, and again, I'm only going to give you a couple examples for sake of time, but I'm going to give you a case that the history of the shroud goes back to the Mendelian of Edessa, where it was folded up 3 times. When you fold it up the first time, you end up with the frontal image. You don't see the back image anymore. Fold it up the second time, you end up with the torso image. Fold it up the third time, you end up with just the face image. And then just like a t-shirt, if you want to display the awesome art on there, I can't ever do it, man. And then there's that thing where you're like 2 points and you do this and it's perfect. I don't understand. But if you want to display it, you fold the arms back and you end up with just the face image on there, which explains why these have symmetry, because when it was folded on top of itself and the silver relinquery box dripped down, it dripped through all layers. So that's why you have these actually match up with down there, which match up down here. That's also why we have the long scorch marks, is because of the way that it was folded up. So we're going to look for the Mendelian of Edessa history. In 544 AD, which was way before the medieval times, the Mendelian of Edessa shows up right here in this city gate. You see this, back in the day, before they were all digitally stored, if the house was on fire, you would say photos. Not money, because you can get more of that. Not cats, but dogs, and at least one person. Can you tell I'm a dog person? I like cats too, I just like other people's cats. And then they can stay there. But in 544, when this was burning down, the most important thing they could think to save was not the cats, it was the image over the gate. And not only was it so important to save this image over the gate, which looks like a face, it was so important that an artist thought, man, I need to paint a picture depicting the moment where they were taking this down. That's how important this was. So if we fast forward, we get into the 10th century. This is Abgarus of Edessa holding that same face cloth, again, at least 300 years prior to the medieval time. We see it showing up in the face cloth again. So it's influenced art through centuries. I'm going to give you one other example. This one's really cool. On the left, you've got the gold Byzantine coin that was struck between 693 and 695. Again, hundreds of years prior to the medieval time. On the right, you've got the shroud. When I superimpose the two on top of each other, it's an exact match. Now, I'm not saying that because the shroud matches the coin, that makes that the face of Jesus. All I'm saying is the person who minted the coin thought that by using the shroud, they were using the accurate face of Jesus. At least they thought that. And I said, I've got about 20 of them that I can go over. I want to get to the good stuff. The image on the shroud, what is it? What's causing the image on the shroud? I don't know. I have no clue. I can tell you what it isn't, but I can't tell you what it is. And I'm thinking, why did I show up? Isn't it food time yet? Let me let the experts talk.
And at that point in time, I knew that whatever this was, it wasn't a painting.
Nor is it a drawing, or a photograph, or a scorch mark. So what made the image? After 30 years of intensive analysis, the scientists who examined the shroud still have no idea.
Tell me that's not interesting. 30 years that most of the people who have studied the shroud are not Christians at all. They're skeptics, they're Jews, they're atheists, they're agnostics, they're Mormons, they're people who are trying to, if anything, make it go away. And after 30 years, they still don't know. Here's why. The image is superficial. Now wrap your mind around this. Y'all ever try to thread a needle? It's like, man, it's tough. Y'all kids need to thread a needle. It builds character because you learn patience, because you take your thread and you go, I like your laugh. Your laugh is awesome. Don't keep laughing. You can be like one of those people sitting in the room and you laugh. I just laugh because you're laughing. I have no idea what's so funny, but you're laughing. Back to my. And then you line it up. And just about the time you think you've got it, going through the little hole, you reach around quickly because you got to make that quick move. And then you try and pull it, half the thread stays behind. And you're like, oh! You got to start again. And you try. That's because one thread is made up of sometimes upwards of 120 microfibers just to make one thread. A thread is minuscule, and it takes hundreds, thousands of threads to make the shirt, but it takes microfibers to sew up, to be wound together to make one thread. The image is on the first two microfibers of a single thread, which is probably my favorite part of the whole thing, because that is the biggest hurdle that a forger would have to jump over to get to the point where they can recreate this. Because if you use paints, powders, pigments, oils, dyes, resins, or any other medium, which by the record has not been found on the Shroud, as soon as you take your artist brush to do it and you touch the fabric, it would penetrate through the cloth. Doesn't matter what you use, it would at least penetrate through two threads. This is on the first two microfibers of a single thread. This is microscopy trying to look on it. You can see there's just staining. There's not even enough staining on there for them to extract it. They've extracted columns, they've extracted limestone, they've extracted all this stuff to do testing. They can't extract what's actually making the image. The image technically isn't there. It's a superficial image because it's only on the first two microfibers. That is the first scientific anomaly, but it gets better. The photo is actually a negative. This is for the kids in here. I'm sorry, this is going to be the hardest thing you've ever understood, because you take a picture and like a half a second later it's on Instagram or Snapchat. But back in my day, we would take a picture and we would have to take it to Walmart or something. And my next door neighbor taught me how to do this. He had a dark room. You take your film, you actually had film, and you put it into the liquid solution in a dark room. And you would develop what's called a photo negative, and from the photo negative, you can blast out your positive image. And if y'all have ever looked at old family pictures, and you're like, yeah, these are cool, and then you're like, what's this stuff down in the front? You know, that little flap down in the front, and you pull them out, and Uncle Johnny looks like he's an alien, because all the lights and darks are reversed. It's called a photo negative. This is, again, if we can get past this, we're going to land this plane good. The image that's here, that you're seeing, this is the positive image, right? But the image you're seeing positively is actually a photo negative, because when you take and make a negative out of it, the image turns into a positive image of a man, which means that its original state is in the negative format. Crickets, I get you. Okay, last time we're moving on. In order for, this is what happens when you blow the whole thing up. In order for that, in its negative format, to turn into a positive format, it means that its origin had to have been negative. I told them, this is the hardest part of the whole thing. Here's the problem. In the medieval times, photography was not invented. If I tried to get somebody and said, you can't use any paints, pigments, oils, dyes, powders, resins, or anything, you got to do it on the first two microfibers, which is an impossibility, but I need you to do it in the negative format. He's going to say, what's a negative format? Because until the camera was invented, conceptualizing a negative format was almost an impossibility. So that's another anomaly that we've had. But this gets even better. Y'all ready for another one? I only got two more. This is where it gets good. The VP8 analyzer machine that was invented back in the 1960s by NASA that would take special photography that would go up from satellite, take a picture of Mars, put it through the VP8 analyzer, and it would spit out a topographical map, right? And it would show you the contrast, the high highs, the low lows. You had to have a very special photograph that went into this machine in order to do that. You couldn't just take a regular photograph and put it in, because the light-dark contrast and distance of light wouldn't make anything happen. It would just be a big blur. It would be a big pixelated blur. So by this point, I'm pretty much an expert on the Shroud when I see this next clip, and I realize that the Shroud image is superficial. It's not really there. It's on the first two microfibers. And so wrap your head around what this guy's about to say.
When you look at the Shroud, you have the impression that it's a picture, but it's not a picture at all. It's a database of information.
How in the world does a superficial image that exists on the first two microfibers of a single thread contain three-dimensional data? When you put it inside of the VP8 analyzer, it started spitting it out to the point where they started going even extracting it further with further investigations, and were able to extract out the face and everything else. The History Channel has a show called The Real Face of Jesus. It's a very good documentary. That's where that Ray Downing was from, The Real Face of Jesus. Go watch it. It'll blow your mind. But again, you can't use paints, pigments, oils, dyes. You got to have it on the first two microfibers in a negative format that includes three-dimensional qualities. But I'm not even done. You ready for the fourth one? Because the fourth one was my favorite one. This is crazy. What could have possibly, what's the closest we've come to explaining something? This research is only about 3 years old. What could have possibly done it? Watch this.
The most popular theory of image formation on the Shroud today is that of some form of energy or radiation being transmitted from the body and shrouded in the cloth to the cloth itself.
Is it possible that during the resurrection, Christ's body turned to light, giving off the radiation which imprinted his image on the shroud?
It's not just possible, it's scriptural. If you open up your Bibles, you're going to get to the Mount of Transfiguration, where Jesus was examined by Moses and Elijah to see if he fit all the prophecies that were contained, over 300 of them, and to see if whether or not he matched the law. Was he the sinless sacrifice? And on the Mount of Transfiguration, from the inside out, your Bible tells you that Jesus illuminated from the inside out so that Moses and Elijah could examine him. That's not just a possibility. I would say it's a strong possibility. What about Moses coming down off the mountain after spending 80 days in the presence of God? He came down, his face was illuminated from the inside out to the point where they said, put a veil over your face, we can't even look at you because your face is shining too bright. It's not just a possibility, it's a scriptural possibility. Amen? I was waiting for it. Do it again. Yeah! That's not even where I thought it was coming from. You're like throwing your voice. That's awesome. Say it again. All right. I've never get enough amen. You know what amen means? What does it mean, Scott? So be it. Man, I love that word. So X-ray images is close. We got, for a while they said, well, the forger didn't get it right, didn't know anatomically correct body parts because the fingers are way too long. Throw it away, let's go home. Stop. If it's an X-ray, your fingers don't stop here. Your finger bones go all the way back down in here, which again, anatomically correct, the spike would not have gone through here to hold him on the cross. It would have just ripped straight out. In order to hold him on the cross, the spike would have gone straight through here, which is the space of death stop between those two bones, which is where your median nerve travels through. And when they put that spike through the median nerve and split it in half, collapsing the thumbs on itself, which is why the man has no thumbs. If this is a forger, he's thought of everything. I mean, he's thought of everything. This is where it all started, though. I don't have time to totally get into it, but on the left is the shroud, on the right is the skull. And an orthodontist was sitting on the front row one time, one of the world's famous presenters of the shroud was sitting there. He goes, "Stop, I know what that is. That's actually a panorama. You've got to put the object inside, going out, in order to get a convex shape like that." And Gary was like, "What?" And that's what started this whole research. But here, you want the total picture of this? Watch this.
The Telegraph reports the scientists say the technology that would have been needed to create the marks on the shroud simply was not available in medieval times. They concluded that the exact shape, texture, and depth of the imprints on the cloth could only be produced with the aid of ultraviolet lasers, technology that was clearly not available in medieval times. In case there was any doubt about the preternatural degree of energy needed to make such distinct marks, the report spells it out. This degree of power cannot be reproduced by any normal UV source built to date.
We can send rovers to Mars, we can clone you if you want to, but we still can't fabricate a machine that can produce enough preternatural ultraviolet radiation to create that image on there. So could it be a medieval forgery? Listen, for me, I'm not trying to sell you on this thing. I'm really not. It's not my objective here is to sell you on this. This is the shroud of Jesus, and that's for you to take home and chew on yourself. For me, until some other explanation comes along that's much better than what we've got, it takes a lot more faith for me to dismiss it than it does to just go, I don't know what else it is, man. That's a cool piece of artifact right there. But here's where it gets interesting. Is it Jesus? And Gary Habermas is one of the leading experts in the world on the resurrection. I would say alive today. He's the biggest expert there is. And I was on the phone with him and we're talking, and he said, "Oh, that's easy." And I said, "How's that easy? I know you're Gary Habermas and all, but come on, man, that's not an easy jump." Because now, if you're going to look at Roman crucifixion in the first century, don't use the gospel accounts to teach from, because what happened to Jesus, we have thousands upon thousands upon thousands of written records of Roman crucifixion methods. They were very proud of it, and they were very vulgar about it. I mean, they would love to beat their victims tied to the whipping post before they would need to bring them up to a cross. It was easier for them just to beat them to a pulp to the point where their organs were literally falling out of their body. Sorry for those little kids in here. But that's the reality of Roman crucifixion. That's the reality. I think Mel Gibson's Passion of Christ was probably a little soft, to be quite honest with you, because Romans were good at it. But what they didn't do was ever record a single instance where Jesus had these three things. You have the spear wound, which is right here. And it actually is on his right side. It looks like his left side because of the way that the cloth would come off. It would create that mirror image. So he has a spear wound, which was never recorded in Roman history except for the Gospels. He also had no broken legs. When they came to Jesus and found he was already dead, they did not break his legs. And we know that he doesn't have broken legs because it really is like an x-ray. We can see down in there. We can see on his face that his nose is broken right here. His right eye is almost totally swollen. His right shoulder has an abrasion wound that happened after the initial because of the smearing of the blood. We know, I could stand here for 3 months literally talking about the different evidences we have for the shroud. I'm only giving you a 35-minute version of it. But we know his legs aren't broken. Last, and most importantly, he had the crown of thorns. You can see the wounds on the top of the head and the back of the head. He had the crown of thorns on his head, and it wasn't this dainty little thing that we see in pictures with these big, long, pretty thorns. I think the Roman centurion who had to do that was not happy about that. He had to go out and do that, and he made more of a bush and smashed it on the King of Kings' head. So the man who's in that shroud, that we've already said, man, the anomalies are so much that I can't dismiss it, has all three connecting factors. All three connecting factors to that one account of one person who went through that, compared to thousands. John goes into the tomb early that morning after Mary had gone and come and found the tomb empty and ran back and said, yo, did you see she said yo? And she did. The Greek word for yo is yo, isn't it? Oi. Okay, so finally the other disciple ran to the tomb first, also went inside and saw and believed. That's a cool scripture. That's chapter 20, verse 8. The very next one, chapter 20, verse 9 says they still did not understand from scripture that Jesus had to rise from the dead. So this is just my conjecture. This is just Dave Glander talking. This is my theory, and y'all don't have to hold it, and that's okay. But I think what that means is John goes in, and we know that the image has been fading over time. He goes in, sees the body missing, and he's like, no. He pulls it up looking for it, and he sees this darker image scorched into the cloth somehow. And in his first century mind, he's like, I don't know what's going on here, but man, something just welled up inside of him. He's like, he's got to be, I don't understand, something's welled up inside of him. But I want to close with this on the shroud, and then I want to land the plane, and I want you to hear it. Barry believed the blood, red blood. You see, Barry is the world's leading expert on the Shroud of Turin. Travels the world. He's been to Turin, Italy, to teach on the shroud. Barry is a Jewish man. Barry, according to his own admittance, says, I don't care if you're saved or not. I don't know what saved is. Don't care. I've been merely following the evidence since I was given the opportunity to start studying it in 1978. And I said, well, how did you become totally convinced? He said, let me tell you a story. For 30 years, we've been scrutinizing this thing, trying to make it go away, and every peer-reviewed scientific test kept pointing back to the authenticity of that of Jesus of Nazareth. But I couldn't get past the fact that in 1978, when we turned the corner, Alan Adler was with him, the NASA scientist, was with Barry, also a Jewish man, turned the corner, saw that the blood still had a reddish tint to it, and said it's got to be a forgery because everybody knows blood will oxidize and turn black. And so on that day when they went in there, they said that, and for 30 years he kept saying, but the blood, but the blood, but the blood. Alan calls him on the phone 30 years later and says, Barry, are you sitting down? He said, I'm driving. He says, well, pull over. Barry pulls over and says, what is it, man? Barry says, I know why the blood is red. Barry said he saw 30 years of his life flash before his eyes. He said, what do you mean? Well, Alan has started doing some cross-research with body farms where they'll donate your body to science, they'll extract whatever organs are good, and then they'll take your body and they'll lay it under a tree, in a bed, in the water, just these different scenarios so that they can begin to examine minute by minute the decomposition process. And then now when an investigator really finds a dead body under a tree or laying in bed, and they can do the reverse forensics to see that body's been laying there for 2 weeks, 3 days, and 2 hours, so they can go back and say, okay, what happened 2 weeks, 3 days, and 2 hours ago to try and solve why the body's there in the first place. It's called reverse forensics. And so here's what they've discovered with these body farms. When a person is brutally killed, whether it be from decapitation or being ripped open or different things that cause the body to go through such a severe trauma that the body isn't able to produce enough blood fast enough. You can only make so much blood. And when your body's losing the blood fast enough to make it, how many of y'all know God is just incredible, man? And He has created us in such a fascinating way. I mean, amen, seriously. And so here's what the body does unto death. When a victim of trauma, this is modern day science, when a victim of trauma loses all their blood, even unto death, the body's trying to pump something through its veins and no it has to, starts going through the liver and pulling out a serum known as bilirubin. Bilirubin starts to come up through the blood, through the heart, getting pumped out. So when they're finally dead, what's laying there, bleeding out from their wounds, isn't necessarily blood anymore. It's something known as bilirubin. Bilirubin's extremely high in iron, and when iron dries, it stays a reddish tint. So 2-week-old blood in modern research can stay red for 2 weeks, as much as 2,000-year-old blood, because it's not technically blood anymore, it's bilirubin that's excreting from the wounds. Well, I had a massive problem on my hand. I'm on the phone with a Jewish man at this point who's not going to understand what he just said to me. Because you see, I've been a Christian for a while now, but I didn't understand the totality of grace until he said that. Because see, the Old Testament sacrifice had to be completely bled out in order for it to be acceptable to God. And when he hung on that cross, he didn't go 80% of the way for you. He didn't go 90% of the way, or 95% of the way, or 98% of the way, or 99.5% of the way. When he hung on that cross, in order to bleed out bilirubin, you have to be beaten to a pulp so badly that your organs are hanging out of you, your skin is flailing off of you, and you're bleeding so profusely that you're bleeding out bilirubin. And when he said, "Tetelestai," it is finished, what he meant by that was, Father, I've done your will. I've taken their place. I've taken all their sins upon me. And I am now the perfect sacrifice because I have no blood left to give. The Bible says that blood is the life source for the flesh. Who was Jesus? He was God-man in the flesh. In order for God-man in the flesh to bring reconciliation back to mankind after the fall, he had to be bled out completely because the blood is the life source for the flesh. He was God in the flesh. Let me tell you why that means so much to me. This is why it means so much to me. That was me. I despise that picture because I don't know who that dude is. I was raised an atheist. For the sake of kids sitting in the room, my innocence was stolen very young. I started doing drugs when I was 6, and hated Christians. I was a militant atheist. I hated Christians. My wife was praying for me reading this stupid book called Jesus Knowing You Personally. And it drove me nuts, and I would take that book and I would throw it in the dresser that she had, and that book would keep popping back up. I hated everything about Christians. Thought they were stupid, ignorant, just why bother? Y'all are so lost you don't even know the reality of life. That was who I was. And when I was 26, I lost my mom and ended up on meth. And after almost a 4-year addiction, I was about 105 pounds. I had left my wife and my son. I was living in a dead man's estate that hadn't closed yet in the corner of a room on some cushions. Everything I had was, I'm going to flip past that picture if y'all don't mind. I hate that picture. I don't know who that guy is. But after 4 years, I went back to the house one night, and my wife was gracious enough to take me in, and I had it out with a God that I didn't think was listening. I didn't think anybody was on the other end of this phone call. But I was sitting there just going, why would you create me and lead me to this? I didn't understand who he was. I didn't understand that he had a plan for my life. I didn't understand the cross. I didn't understand. And I just said, if you're God, do something about it. And that was my altar call that night. And I don't know what happened from that point on. All I remember is this, because it's been a blur. I've only been saved for like 13 years. I'm not a seasoned Christian that's been around for 50 years. God has had me on a fast track ever since the day that I said, if you're God, do something about it. He went, man, that's all I was waiting for. I was waiting for you to set your humility down and just come to me and give me control, because that's all I've ever wanted, was for you to give it up and let me take control. And so I did that night, and this is not me bragging on myself. This is God taking something, because he didn't ask me to get cleaned up. He didn't ask me to get all right before he sucked me into his world and started turning things around. He said, right where you are at 105 pounds, I take you. And so, man, I've been all over the place. I've authored books. I speak at conferences. I've had my own radio show. I've been an article writer for magazines. I've been on TV shows. I've traveled around. All this stuff. Why? Because I said, if you're God, do something about it. And every one of you in here needs to hear this. He's got a plan way bigger than you know. And a lot of you have not even started the journey yet. But you're the one stopping that, not him. Because see, here's the thing. All of us have a book called the Book of Life. And there's Jesus' book right there. And here's how the simplicity of the gospel works. Y'all, it's so simple, we've overcomplicated it. Here's how it works. In my book, you open up the pages, and it's full of dirt and filth. And I mean, I was a decent guy, I suppose, but man, I was full of filth. When When you open up Jesus' book, because he was a perfect sacrifice who died in my place on that cross, he's got nothing but pure white pages of goodness. Now here's the thing. When I said, if you're God, do something about it, what I did was I accepted what he did for me on that cross. Some of you need to do that today. You need to accept what was done for you so that you can do this and take and flip your book covers over. And so now I've got his book cover on my life, and when God opens my book cover, it's got pure white pages on the inside of it. When you open up his book cover, that's actually my pages and all my filth. He took it. Every last bit of it. He said, I'm glad to do this for you because I love you. He did not wait for me to get cleaned up. He didn't wait for me to do something where I was like, okay, one day. He said, right where you are, at 105 pounds, I want to take it from you right now. And so here's the thing. Here's you. That's you today. Whose book cover's on your book? Some of you might even have, like the front has his, but the back still has your autobiography on the back of it and the synopsis of the book. You don't bleed out Billy Rubin unless you've gone 100%. Are you 100% committed to the fact that God is so in love with you? Pastor worship team, come on up. God is so in love with you. He's so in love with you. He's so in love with me that he rescued me from myself, Pastor. And he's given me a life that I'm so excited to wake up every day. And I was not like that. I wanted to kill myself. You know what? That's not something specially good for me. Every single one of you sitting in here did it for you. And you know why I know that? Because you can take this away. Because he resurrected from that grave some 2,000 years ago, and he is the absolute truth of life, he's given me my life back. The life that the devil wanted to steal from me. And Joe, I couldn't be happier about that, amen?